All right. Good morning. And if you're with me already, I'm going to need you to bear with me for just a second. I've got some IT issues going on, and it looks like YouTube is okay. Never mind. That is all sorted. All right. Good morning. So, chapter 18. I haven't read it yet, but it seems to be incredibly short. So, what I'm going to do is do chapter 18 and then plow right through into chapter 19, and then I'll post them later as separate videos with separate uh, chapter numbers. So, I hope everybody's having a lovely day. Welcome back. And let's get on with Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. It took a few seconds for the absurdity of this statement to sink in. Then Ron voiced what Harry was thinking. You're both mental. Ridiculous, said Hermione faintly. Peter Pettigrew's dead, said Harry. He killed him 12 years ago. He pointed at Black, whose face twitched convulsively. I meant to, he growled, his yellow teeth bared. But little Potter got the better of me. Not this time, though. And Crookshanks was thrown to the floor as Black lunged at Scabbers. Ron yelled with pain as Black's weight fell on his broken leg. Sirius, no, Lupin yelled, launching himself forwards and dragging Black away from Ron again. Wait, you can't do it just like that. They need to understand. We've got to explain. We can explain afterwards, snarled Black, trying to throw Lupin off, one hand still clawing the air as it tried to reach Scabbers, who was squealing like a piglet, scratching Ron's face and neck as he tried to escape. They've got a right to know everything, Lupin panted, still trying to restrain Black. Ron's kept him as a pet. There are parts of it even I don't understand. And Harry, you owe Harry the truth, Sirius. Black stopped struggling, though his hollowed eyes were still fixed on Scabbers, who was clamped tightly under Ron's bitten, scratched, and bleeding hands. All right, then, Black said, without taking his eyes off the rat. Tell them whatever you like, but make it quick, Remus. I want to commit the murder I was imprisoned for. You know, Peter Pettigrew not really being very super appreciative here. He is all about tearing Ron up to escape. Dude's got no loyalty for being sheltered in the Weasley family for years. But loyalty's not really his thing, is it? Good morning, Katie. Hi, how you doing? You're nutters, both of you, said Ron shakily, looking around at Harry and Hermione for support. I've had enough of this. I'm off. He tried to heave himself up on his good leg, but Lupin raised his wand again, pointing it at Scabbers. You're going to hear me out, Ron, he said quietly. Just keep a tight hold on Peter while you listen. He's not Peter, he's Scabbers, Ron yelled, trying to force the rat back into his front pocket. But Scabbers was fighting too hard. Ron swayed and overbalanced, and Harry caught him and pushed him back down to the bed. Then, ignoring Black, Harry turned to Lupin. There were witnesses who saw Pettigrew die, he said. A whole street full of them. They didn't see what they thought they saw, said Black savagely, still watching Scabbers struggling in Ron's hands. Excuse me. Everyone thought Sirius killed Peter, said Lupin, nodding. I believed it myself, until I saw the map tonight, because the Marauder's map never lies. Peter's alive. Ron's holding him, Harry. Harry looked down at Ron, and as their eyes met, they agreed silently. Black and Lupin were both out of their minds. Their story made no sense whatsoever. How could Scabbers be Peter Pettigrew? Azkaban must have unhinged Black after all. But why was Lupin playing along with him? Great question for Harry to be asking himself. Then Hermione spoke in a trembling would-be calm sort of voice, as though trying to will Professor Lupin to talk sensibly. But Professor Lupin, Scabbers can't be Pettigrew. It just can't be true. You know it can't. Why can't it be true? Lupin said calmly, as though they were in class and Hermione had simply spotted a problem in an experiment with Grindylows. Because people would know if Peter Pettigrew had been an animagus. because people would know if Peter Pettigrew had been an animagus. We did animagi, magi. We did animagi in class with Professor McGonagall, and I looked them up when I did my homework. The ministry keeps tabs on witches and wizards who can become animals. There's a register showing what animal they become and their markings and things. And I went and looked Professor McGonagall up on the register, and there have only been 7 animagi this century, and Pettigrew's name wasn't on the list. All right, I'm going to take a sip of coffee and check out the messages here. Ah. Yeah. So, yeah, excellent point. Ron's got this broken leg, and he's still trying to save this rat. Loyalty is this thing. If you get Ron to turn on you, you've probably burnt that bridge. Well, I guess we'll learn more about that later in the books, huh? Harry barely had time to marvel inwardly at the effort Hermione put into her homework when Lupin started to laugh. Right again, Hermione, he said. But the ministry never knew that there used to be 3 unregistered animagi running around Hogwarts. If you're going to tell them the story, get a move on, Remus, snarled Black, who is still watching Scabbers' every desperate move. I've waited 12 years. I'm not going to wait much longer. Yeah. Well, Hermione, she's still with it with the authority. She still respects authority and believes that it could be fair and not capricious. She has trust in the system still. There we go. I've waited 12 years. I'm not going to wait much longer. All right, but you'll need to help me, Sirius, said Lupin. I only know how it began. Lupin broke off. There had been a loud creak behind them. The bedroom door had opened of its own accord. All 5 of them stared at it. Then Lupin strode towards it and looked out into the landing. No one there. This place is haunted, said Ron. It's not, said Lupin, still looking at the door in a puzzled way. The Shrieking Shack was never haunted. The screams and howls the villagers used to hear were made by me. He pushed his graying hair out of his eyes, thought for a moment, then said, That's where all of this starts, with my becoming a werewolf. None of this could have happened if I hadn't been bitten, and if I hadn't been so foolhardy. He looked sober and tired. Ron started to interrupt, but Hermione said, Shh. She was watching Lupin very intently. I was a very small boy when I received the bite. My parents tried everything, but in those days, there was no cure. The potion that Professor Snape has been making for me is a very recent discovery. It makes me safe, you see. As long as I take it in the week preceding the full moon, I keep my mind when I transform. I'm able to curl up in my office, a harmless wolf, and wait for the moon to wane again. Before the wolfsbane potion was discovered, however, I became a fully fledged monster once a month. It seems impossible I would be able to come to Hogwarts. Other parents weren't likely to want their children exposed to me. But then Dumbledore became headmaster and he was sympathetic. He said that as long as we took certain precautions, there was no reason I shouldn't come to school. Lupin sighed and looked directly at Harry. I told you, months ago, that the Whomping Willow was planted the year I came to Hogwarts. The truth is that it was planted because I had come to Hogwarts. This house, Lupin looked miserably around the room, the tunnel that leads to it, they were built for my use. Once a month I was smuggled out of the castle into this place to transform. The tree was placed at the tunnel mouth to stop anyone coming across me while I was dangerous. Harry couldn't see where this story was going, but he was listening raptly all the same. The only sound apart from Lupin's voice was Scabbers' frightened squeaking. Well, I don't know where this story is going either, but if we try to put ourselves in Lupin's place for this story, he grew up not trusting himself, not being trusted, and deliberately isolated on a regular basis. I've always wondered, and this is a rhetorical question, just food for thought. I've always wondered if the werewolf myths were some sort of way of projecting shame and fear about menstrual cycles. Hmm. Anyways, my transformations in those days were terrible. It is very painful to turn into a werewolf. I was separated from humans to bite, so I bit and scratched myself instead. The villagers heard the noise and the screaming and thought they were hearing a particularly violent spirits. Dumbledore encouraged the rumor. Even now, when the house has been silent for years, the villagers don't dare approach it. But apart from my transformations, I was never happier than I had ever been in my life. For the first time ever, I had friends. 3 great friends. Sirius Black, Peter Pettigrew, and of course, your father, Harry, James Potter. Now, my 3 friends could hardly fail to notice that I disappeared once a month. I made up all sorts of stories. I told them my mother was ill, and that I had to go home to see her. I was terrified they would desert me the moment they found out what I was. But of course, they, like you, Hermione, worked out the truth. And they didn't desert me at all. Instead, they did something for me that would make my transformations not only bearable, but the best times of my life. They became animaga. My dad, too? Said Harry, astounded. Yes, indeed, said Lupin. It took them the best part of 3 years to work out how to do it. Your father and Sirius here were the cleverest students in the school, and lucky they were because the animagus transformation can go horribly wrong. One reason the ministry keeps a close watch on those attempting to do it. Peter needed all the help he could get from James and Sirius. Finally, in our 5th year, they managed it. They could turn each other into a different animal at will. But how did that help you? Said Hermione, sounding puzzled. And let's check our messages. See what interesting things we have to say. Yeah. He has had to live with that shame and the isolation and the disappearance, and he's never been, allowed to tell or share. It's a secret that he carries. It's a secret he's alone in, and he's always alone in it. I mean, a lot of people think that they're flawed, but Lupin has something he can look at every month, whether he wants to or not, and says, "Ooh, there is definitely something different about me that is dangerous and harmful." That's going to be hard to reconcile. How do you sit with that when you're really just a kind, empathetic person? They couldn't keep me company as humans, so they kept me company as animals, said Lupin. A werewolf is only a danger to people. They sneaked out of the castle every month under James's invisibility cloak. They transformed. Peter, as the smallest, could slip beneath the willow's attacking branches and touch the knot that freezes it. They would then slip down the tunnel and join me. Under their influence, I became less dangerous. My body was still wolfish, but my mind seemed to become less so while I was with them. Hurry up, Remus, snarled Black. Good morning. Hurry up, Remus, snarled Black, who was still watching Scabbers with a horrible sort of hunger in his face. I'm getting there, Sirius. I'm getting there. Well, hey, highly exciting possibilities were open to us now. We could all transform. So we were leaving the shrieking shack and roaming the school grounds in the village by night. Sirius and James transformed into such large animals they were able to keep a werewolf in check. I doubt whether any Hogwarts students ever found out more about the Hogwarts grounds and Hogsmeade than we did. And that's how we came to write the Marauders map and sign it with our nicknames. Sirius is Padfoot, Peter is Wormtail, James was Prongs. What sort of animal? Harry began, but Hermione cut across him. That was still really dangerous. Running around in the dark with a werewolf? What if you've given the others the slip and bitten somebody? A thought that still haunts me, said Lupin heavily, and there were near misses, many of them. We laughed about them afterwards. We were young, thoughtless, carried away with our own cleverness. I sometimes felt guilty about betraying Dumbledore's trust, of course. He had admitted me to Hogwarts when no other headmaster would have done so, and he had no idea I was breaking the rules he had set down for my own and others' safety. He never knew I had led 3 fellow students into becoming animagi illegally. But I always managed to forget my guilty feelings every time we sat down to plan our next month's adventure, and I haven't changed. Well, you're not going to change if you forget your guilty thoughts. Lupin's face had hardened, and there was self-disgust in his voice. Lupin's got some shame work he needs to do. Lupin's voice had hardened, and there was self-disgust in his voice. All this year, I've been battling with myself, wondering whether I should tell Dumbledore that Sirius is an animagus. But I didn't do it. Why? Because I was too cowardly. It would have meant admitting that I'd betrayed his trust while I was at school, admitting that I'd led others along with me. And Dumbledore's trust has meant everything to me. He let me into Hogwarts as a boy, and he gave me a job, and when I have been shunned all my adult life, unable to find paid work because of what I am. And so I convinced myself that Sirius was getting into the school using dark arts he learned from Voldemort, and that being an animagus had nothing to do with it. So, in a way, Snape's been right about me all along. Pause. Lupin, thus far throughout this whole book, has been holding emotional containment for everybody else. My man just went through a shame spiral, and he lost it. He lost the plot. He lost his emotional containment, and he just shame spiraled all over the whole room. Now he needs help. Now let's check our messages. Oh, yeah. I mean, think about that. He said it like it was nothing, but the screams and howls and banging of him terrorizing his own flesh still scares the villagers. Nothing about that says he didn't feel it. He was screaming for a reason. Snape, said Black harshly, taking his eyes off Scabbers for the first time in minutes and looking up at Lupin. What's Snape's got to do with it? He's here, Sirius, said Lupin heavily. He's teaching here as well. He looked up at Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Professor Snape was at school with us. He fought very hard against my appointment to the Defense Against the Dark Arts job. He has been telling Dumbledore all year that I am not to be trusted. He has his reasons. You see, Sirius here played a trick on him, which nearly killed him. A trick which involved me. Black made a derisive noise. It served him right, he sneered, sneaking around, trying to find out what we were up to, hoping he could get us expelled. Severus was very interested in where I went every month, Lupin told Harry, Ron, and Hermione. We were in the same year, you know, and we, didn't like each other very much. He especially disliked James. Jealous, I think. He especially disliked James. Jealous, I think, of James's talent on the Quidditch pitch. Anyway, Snape had seen me crossing the grounds with Madame Pomfrey one evening as she led me towards the Whomping Willow to transform. Sirius thought it would be, amusing to tell Snape all he had to do was prod the knot on the tree trunk with a long stick, and he'd be able to get in after me. Well, of course, Snape tried it, and if he'd got as far as this house, he'd have met a fully grown werewolf. But your father, who'd heard what Sirius had done, went after Snape and pulled him back, at great risk to his life. Snape glimpsed me, though, at the end of the tunnel. He was forbidden to tell anyone by Dumbledore, but from that time on, he knew what I was. So that's why Snape doesn't like you, Harry said slowly, because he thought you were in on the joke? That's right, sneered a cold voice from the wall behind Lupin. Severus Snape was pulling off the invisibility cloak, his wand pointing directly at Lupin. Now, this is the part where I normally say, thus concludes chapter 18. See you guys soon. But in this case, as we're only 20 minutes into this live, I'm going to have a sip of coffee. I'm going to look at my comments, and then we'll move on and do the Servant of Lord Voldemort. So 1 second.